market. He will share insights coming from research and consulting expertise and experience. Further on in the webinar, we will zoom in on the TenForce approach, and we will share some critical success factors with you. As I said already before, throughout the webinar, there are ways to ask questions in the chat, and we will deal with them in the webinar itself. So why are we here? Because actually at TenForce, we have a solution that exists out of multiple modules. You can have a quick overview here on the slide. Please have a look, but it ranges from everything that has to do with safety management over operational risk management. So ranging from, let's say, incident management up to a complete solution of permit management. And we are used to implementing this platform and multiple models at the customer. We're also part of ELISA Industrik. ELISA Industrik is a global player that offers a digital ecosystem for the manufacturing industry. We are enhancing altogether the partners and the companies in that group altogether are enhancing operational intelligence with AI-powered solutions. And we serve about 1,000 customers with our 800 experts. And we are working on a global scale in 20 different locations. As TenForce, we also have an interesting track record. We have been implementing and we have been doing implementations on a really large scale across multiple industries. And we scaled our solution in many different dimensions. So in short, we scaled our solutions over different sites. We implemented different modules. We also have large-scale implementations with thousands and many thousands of users. We also scale across geography, ranging from New Zealand till the Americas, across the globe then. We also have multiple languages, and we also integrate with a very diverse range of corporate applications. So zooming in on these volumes, we have about 35,000 different modules in the field. We have about 175,000 users also worldwide, and altogether they create about 30 million items, we call them. So an item can be whatever. It's an action, an inspection, a permit, an incident, an accident. So together they make a huge volume of data. We have also some nice references in the domain of the amount of sites. So we have implementations with 44 active sites in the US. We have about 501 active sites in the EU. And as I said before, the slide mentions a list of languages that we have implemented. Among them, of course, English, Dutch, French, German, Spanish, Italian, Polish, Finnish, etc. With regards to growing implementations, we have some really nice stories about growing our implementation at a chemical plant where there are multiple sites and where we prepare basically a template that activates 12 modules at once per new site. So this company is acquiring quite a lot of companies, and every time there is a new company, we launch this template and we activate 12 modules at once. In food and beverage, we have also some nice stories about a customer that grew a 3-module implementation in one location in Europe to 58 site implementation with a total of 174 standardized modules. So they're all acting and operating in the same way. And then finally, in the chemical industry, we have an implementation where we went from one module in one location here in the port of Antwerp to at least 57 modules in about 30 locations. So here are some of the companies that trust TenForce. So as you can see, we have BASF, that's one of the biggest or the biggest chemical company in the world. We have INEOS, that's the 3rd biggest chemical company in the world. We also have Fonterra and Friesland Campina. They're among the top 5 in the dairy producing industry. So zooming in on today's topic, we want to share with you some insights about controlling risks in large-scale implementation. So there are some risks if you grow your implementation on a global scale, on a multi-site level, so we will zoom in on that. One of the challenges that are very obvious is that everybody needs to get buy-in from the people involved, from your users, from your stakeholders. So we will also share some insights and some tips and tricks on that one. Scaling software can seem quite intimidating, and so you have to make sure that you structure it in the right way, and that you're not overwhelmed by that project scope. And then finally, we also learned, and we also want to share with you, that you have to be really careful not to end up with analysis paralysis. So please try to make sure that you don't have to figure out every detail up front. Now I pass the word on to Tom Brown. He can share, and he will share some really interesting insights that Verdantix gathered. So Tom, please go ahead.
Thanks a lot for that introduction, Bastian. I must say it's a real pleasure to speak today on a topic that we see at Verdantix causing a lot of headaches in the EHS function at the moment. A small introduction to Verdantix. For those of you that aren't aware of us, we are an independent research and advisory firm, and we really focus in on thought leadership around technology in 5 key business functions: EHS, ESG, net zero, operational excellence, and smart buildings. So we've been covering kind of EHS technology and, as a result, EHS software for over a decade. And we run the highly regarded EHS Green Quadrant, which benchmarks the top EHS software providers in the market. And one trend that we've recently witnessed amongst kind of all of the EHS software offerings is that they're becoming far more differentiated and less centered around kind of the traditional lagging input of incident data. And really, for progressive firms who take their EHS progression very seriously, it offers a hub playing vital roles in the likes of operational risk management, total worker health, and ESG reporting. Could you go on to the next slide, please, Bastian? So it's great me talking about all of these opportunities that new EHS software functionalities can give you and your business. And look, there's numerous benefits: more data analysis, streamlining reporting and compliance actions. But as many of you probably know, unfortunately, it's not as easy as just buying licenses and getting started. And I think this snapshot on screen of EHS software adoption, which was drawn from our recent global survey of 300 EHS leaders, gives a great insight to the lag between corporate ambitions to really digitize all these EHS processes and actually getting the software into the hands of their employees. So what this survey really highlights is that apart from the core modules, you can see incident management at the top there, more often than not, it's the case that firms have struggled, stalled, or outright failed to digitize EHS processes across the entire business. Now, the main reason behind this, EHS software implementations and rollouts are arduous tasks. Firms have to blend and harmonize technology, people, and their internal processes in order to really reap the benefits of EHS software. And this is a real difficult journey. And what can be inferred kind of from this figure again is that a lot of these large global firms are tied in this almost perpetual cycle of rolling out new functionality across their business. So as firms kind of really struggle to scale EHS software effectively and consistently, they're actually losing a lot of these benefits that I mentioned before. And I'll go to explain this in more detail on the next slide. So as you saw from Bastian's great introduction, the largest kind of vendors in the space those included in our green quadrant, have a wide range of modules and functionalities to support your business. Yet what you can see from the survey extract here on the left, this pie chart, is once again of 300 firms with over each of them having revenues over $250 million. Is that many firms rely on a number of point EHS solutions across the business to manage EHS. And you can see over half of respondents in the survey using 6 or more. And now granted, the largest and most sophisticated firms, talking your kind of oil and gas giants, will pick and choose software modules from various vendors based on their functional merits. And they'll integrate them all together in a huge project. But most firms really don't have the resources, money, and people to take this approach. And believe you me, I've seen a lot of the systems that these oil and gas giants are using, and they are very difficult. And a lot of work has gone into them, and more often than not, they struggle. So for the rest of these firms, using multiple systems is really a symptom of them once again struggling to scale EHS software across their business. Instead, they rely on legacy systems based in kind of small jurisdictions, or they hastily implement single modules as a real stopgap during this kind of wider scaling out process. And these little systems often exist in silos. They've got different workflows, they've got a different look and feel, and they produce inconsistent outputs. And what you can see on the right-hand side here is that firms who rely on this unconsolidated array of different EHS software systems miss out on a whole host of potential benefits, kind of most notably around centralizing and consistency within their EHS workflows. And what is really poignant is that we talk to a lot of EHS managers, and a lot of these benefits that they can get from consolidating EHS software link directly to the key goals that we have heard them kind of set out for 2023. Achieving these without that consolidated software a lot more difficult. Could you please go on to the next slide, please? So getting into it now, why is scaling software something that requires a lot of due diligence and prep? It's really down to the fact that, well, as your business scales, it doesn't scale uniformly. As you can see, software has to grow alongside the business. It really must bend and flex to align with your firm's requirements. And on this slide, I've identified 4 key factors that really impact this. Firstly, firms often diversify as they grow. They get new business functions that operate kind of differently from the core business. And to support them effectively, the software must configure to their needs without jeopardizing firm-wide EHS initiatives like global reporting. This is kind of the same case for geographies. The software must be agile enough to adapt to new regional requirements and cultural norms, as well as languages. M&A, mergers and acquisitions, often cause a lot of difficulty. And new firms that kind of acquired have their own ways of doing things. They've got their own EHS software systems more often than not. And during M&A decisions, firms have to face a crossroads. Do you let the acquired firm carry on operating with their own EHS software system and way of doing things, or do you really invest in standardizing across the business? And lastly, expanding functionality. Look, firms want to, as soon as they get one module, often look to expanding their functionality with the vendor. But doing this with a single vendor can be problematic. Quite a lot of these vendors have built up this wide portfolio of software functionalities through acquisition and are currently in the back end still kind of going through the process of stitching these all together to form an integrated platform. And an unintegrated platform really creates a lot of the similar issues that I mentioned on the before slide. A lack of standardization and a reduced adoption as workers have to click from one module to the other and sign in kind of 2, 3, 4 times. On to the next slide, please. So what happens when scaling software goes wrong? And at Verdantix, we have a big consulting function, and we've been drafted in to do a lot of these as-is EHS software evaluations. And I've picked a prime example here of a firm that has scaled with the vendor very inefficiently. As you can see, this is quite a large firm, and it's diverted a lot of resources into EHS development, implementing a multifunctional EHS system alongside a leading vendor partner. But unfortunately, they're very disjointed in their scaling process. They made a lot of bad decisions without foresight and consideration of kind of the overall bigger picture. A few examples of these were stakeholders taking modules for themselves, pulling in different directions, doing their own thing with customizations and configurations of different modules. This led to a lot of poor technical decisions, a lot of over customization that really compromised the integrity of the system itself. This once again led to kind of inconsistent outputs, a lack of integration opportunities, just a lot of inconsistency throughout workflows and data. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, and I've really summarized some of the main root causes. But this had real damning effects for the performance of the software. You can see here these confused processes and ununiformity made it kind of really alienated a lot of the users who kind of just dropped it after really struggling with it. This lack of usability, lack of data being entered or data being entered wrong, made it a nightmare to collect and aggregate data for the EHS managers on the back end. And I mentioned this over customization and compromising the system itself. This led to loads of bugs that were rife throughout the system, and the poor IT team had so much stress on them with all these tickets that were coming through. So really not having a looked at the bigger picture and having a clear idea of what the system was meant to achieve left modules siloed, certain efficiencies were not inbuilt. They didn't even integrate with an Active Directory because they were unable, because they'd over customized the system. And super users just had a horrible time trying to kind of do all these menial tasks rather than doing meaningful things within the system, like data trending, that are really useful. And what's really sad in a lot of these cases is that the firm just loses faith with the system completely and decide to ditch it and maybe get a new EHS software system or even go back to spreadsheets. And with so much time, effort, and money invested, it's such a costly lesson for people to learn. So hopefully this webinar is giving you some good pointers. On to the next slide, please, Sebastian. So yeah, granted, the last couple of slides are all doom and gloom, quite concerning if you're looking to scale your software. But I think the best summary to take away of this is that in order to really reap the benefits of scaling EHS software, you must really give it the attention it deserves. So here, what I've done is outlined some kind of key factors and considerations that you should really keep top of mind prior and throughout to your future scaling projects that really align your software alongside your business. So firstly, it's really finding the right balance between flexibility and standardization, especially within your forms and your workflows. Flexibility, obviously, is centered around letting those separate entities within your business, those different business functions, fulfill their EHS needs effectively. For example, a construction part of the business will want to cut down and break down data a lot differently from an asset management or an operations side of the business. So having that flexibility lets them go and kind of configure the system to their needs. But then you also must consider standardization and the benefits of this, such as kind of being able to quickly and effectively fulfill global EHS reporting requirements. Other things like standardization makes it easier to use across the business and makes data more comparable for trending. So you really must find a solution that gives you the configurability to find this happy medium between flexible and standardized. And this same level of configurability really must be applied to matching the system's organizational hierarchy so that it reflects your business and what you want the system to do. So a well thought out organizational hierarchy within the software system will give EHS stakeholders throughout the firm the correct permissions, as well as the kind of ample levels of data malleability to cut data in ways that make it really meaningful for them and their requirements. But once again, allowing all this data to bubble up in a consistent format for effective firm-wide initiatives. And the last point I want to touch on, and I think everyone knows this, but it's really important to kind of highlight and emphasize, is that ease of use is paramount. Invest heavily in making the software more usable, the UI kind of adequate for users, and this investment will be repaid in full. Make sure throughout the rollout you really go out to people and get the software in their hands, get their feedback. Make sure you have their language needs, their cultural requirements, their different kind of aspects that make an EHS software system right for them, incorporated into your thinking. Could you go on to the next slide, please, Bastian? So the last thing I want to touch on in my slides here really loops back to what I said in my first slide. EHS software platforms have the potential to be this central hub that drives success within a number of processes. EHS systems are getting closer to ERP systems in some cases, compared to those incident management systems of old. With this, firms should be really vigilant of opportunities to integrate data across adjacent systems within a wider kind of digital ecosystem, whether it be integrating with the likes of asset data platforms. This really effectively assesses operational risk with more clarity. You can factor in more asset-related data and give that contextualization to risks. Maybe it's kind of integrating with ERPs, so you can lay EHS data with kind of a wider range of data across your business. This is going to be especially useful for pulling all this data together for ESG reporting. For firms with large supply chains, supplier management, contractor management really allows you to gain a lot more insight into kind of the risks, both EHS and wider across your supply chain. So that's the last point. I want you to be very vigilant of what EHS software can do for you, not just in EHS sense, but in that much wider sense, and how it can drive really big, impactful successes and benefits across all of your business. Well, thank you. I'll pass back on to Bastian now, who will introduce the next part of the webinar. Bastian, you're on mute.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for sharing these pitfalls. Thank you for sharing some great advice. Before we move over to we dive into the TenForce experience, where we'll share with you some practical learnings and some practical insights. We have time to take a couple of questions. I don't know whether some questions ended up in the chat, or does anybody have a question?
There is one question. How beneficial is a mobile application for workforce engagement? And of course, is mobile part of the TenForce offering too?
Julia, would you be able to take that question?
Yes, of course. So the mobile application, we see it more and more in use at our different customers. It allows more flexibility and on-site and on-the-spot other incident registration or other actions that can be taken. As it part of the TenForce offering, yes, it is. We offer a mobile application with a TenForce platform that allows you to render any of the modules. We support all different versions, being iOS, Android, but also the Windows tablet, which is very useful, as you can also run it on small laptops. I don't know, Bastian, if you have more to add to that.